Life in the urban sprawl as a police officer doesn't just toughen you, it encases you in a shell of skepticism, so thick it might as well be Kevlar. That was me, Emma, a 37-year-old former lieutenant turned private detective. I lugged around a suitcase of mistrust heavier than the cases I cracked, my daily grind orbiting around unfaithful partners and the art of deception. Not exactly the setting for a romantic tale, right? Then Bobby strolled into my life, a beacon of modern art, refreshing my world like a vibrant brushstroke on a fading mural. We crossed paths at an art exhibition in Philadelphia, swarming with enthusiasts tossing around terms like postmodern and avant-garde with effortless poise. Out of my depth, I felt more misplaced than ever, like a fish pedaling a bicycle rather than swimming in its natural habitat. Intriguing piece, isn't it? Bobby initiated, his gaze fixed on what appeared to be a strategically placed heap of junk. My eyes flicked between him and this masterpiece. If by intriguing you mean I've seen tidier trash heaps, then absolutely, it's fascinating, I quipped. His laugh, deep and resonant, turned heads as he introduced himself. Fast forward 7 months, and I'm utterly smitten, caught up in a whirlwind romance that seemed too surreal. Bobby, a dapper man right out of a style magazine and a gentleman from a past era, swept me off my feet with poetry readings, exquisite art showings, and the kind of attention that made me feel like the only woman alive. Under a starlit sky in Central Park, Bobby proposed, and without a moment's hesitation, I said yes, my heart pounding with sheer joy. The engagement period was a haze of bliss. I often caught myself daydreaming of a future brimming with love, laughter, and children. But the adage about things too good to be true? It began to echo louder when I met Bobby's mother, Marilyn, the epitome of frostiness, who scrutinized me as if I were spoiling the family pedigree. A detective? Isn't that a tad unladylike? She probed during our first unsettling dinner. Depends on the century your ladylike is anchored in, I retorted without missing a beat, earning a tense smile from Bobby. Marilyn's visits grew more frequent, each one an audit of our burgeoning life together. It was a chilly Tuesday evening, just 3 weeks into our marriage, when she appeared unannounced, her disdain palpable. "Emma, darling," she began, her tone thick with condescension. "I see you're still clinging to your quaint job. I had hoped marriage would refine you into a proper lady." I was slicing vegetables for dinner, the knife suddenly appealing for more than just culinary reasons. "Marilyn, where I come from, we call this earning a living. Maybe you should try it sometime, instead of leeching off others," I replied, my voice steady, as her lips pursed tightly. Marilyn maintained her poised demeanor as she suggested. "Bobby was raised with certain expectations, Emma. There's still time for you to switch to a career that's more suitable, something a bit more refined." "Respectable? Like being a full-time meddler?" I replied, the sharpness in my voice unmistakable. "Thanks, but I'd rather stick to tracking down unfaithful spouses and deceivers. Speaking of which, how is your bridge club treating you?" Just then, Bobby entered, his arrival impeccably timed. "What's going on?" he queried, his eyes shifting between his mother and me. "Your wife was clarifying her professional choices for me. I must confess, I hadn't appreciated the allure of working so closely with lawbreakers," Marilyn remarked, her tone overly sweet. Bobby sighed deeply, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Mom, Emma's career is crucial to her. It's part of her identity." Turning towards me with a look of appeal, he said, "Emma, let's not do this now, please." I was itching to argue, to defend my boundaries that his mother was overstepping, but I restrained myself. She was, after all, his mother. "Fine," I said tersely, turning back to aggressively chop the vegetables. The atmosphere became noticeably colder after Marilyn's visits. Bobby would retreat into a silent shell that I found impenetrable. It was painfully clear which side he was on, and it wasn't mine. On one particularly tense evening, after Marilyn had criticized everything from my culinary skills to my housekeeping, I confronted Bobby. "Why don't you ever stand up for me? Your mother treats me like I'm invisible, and you just let her. Is this what our marriage is supposed to be?" Bobby looked weary as he replied, "Emma, she's old-fashioned. What do you want me to do? Cut her off? No, I just want you to support me. To tell her she can't bulldoze over us. Is that asking too much? He sighed, his frustration visible as he raked his fingers through his hair. I'll talk to her, okay? Just give it some time. She'll adjust. But she didn't. Neither did he. The gap between us widened, stoked by Marilyn's coldness and Bobby's passivity, forming a rift that seemed too vast to close. This was no longer just a rocky beginning. It was a stark preview of a potentially bleak future if things didn't change. Living with Bobby started feeling like being part of a melodrama where the cracks in the perfect exterior gradually began to show. He worked at a prestigious art gallery, which might sound impressive until you realize how erratic his earnings were. Meanwhile, I was doing quite well, securing a comfortable lifestyle for us in a stylish apartment in a desirable neighborhood. One evening, as we discussed the future over dinner, I brought up the idea of eventually buying a house and thinking about the space we'd want if we planned to start a family. Bobby paused his fork midair and looked at me quizzically. Emma, where are you getting these ideas? We don't need a house, and me finding a new job isn't on the agenda. I set my fork down, trying to maintain a calm tone. It's not about need, Bobby. It's about planning for our future. And having a stable income would certainly help. He chuckled, a sound that once made me smile but now seemed to scratch at my patience. You and your fixation on money. You always focus on the financial bottom line, don't you? Money isn't everything, Emma. His laughter pushed my frustration to the edge. It's easy for you to say when you're not the one stressed about paying the bills each month. I'm not fixated on money. Bobby had shrugged dismissively, returning to his meal as if we were merely discussing the weather. I'm happy with our life as it is. You're the one who's never satisfied. I stood up, losing my appetite. Maybe I wouldn't be so focused on money if you contributed more than just critiques about how I manage ours. He didn't even glance up. I contribute in other ways, Emma. Not everything is about money. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. This wasn't just about buying a house, planning for kids, or even the finances. It was about respect, partnership, and support, none of which Bobby seemed to value as long as his life remained comfortable. His quick dismissal of my concerns as an obsession with money was a way to dodge the real issues between us. On a seemingly ordinary Sunday, our living room unexpectedly turned into a stage for high drama when Marilyn, my not-so-favorite mother-in-law, dropped in. The air grew tense as she remained glued to her phone, her voice wavering between panic and confusion. And you're telling me my social security number has been suspended? How much do I need to pay to fix this? Marilyn's voice cracked, her hands trembling as she rummaged through her purse for her checkbook and documents. In the kitchen with a coffee in hand, I overheard her mention Social Security and payments. Years of police work had sharpened my instincts, and every alarm bell in my head went off. This was a scam. I hurried into the living room. My approach was quiet but quick. Marilyn, hang up the phone. It's a scam, I interjected firmly but calmly, hoping to convey urgency without causing panic. She turned, shocked and offended. I beg your pardon? I'm handling this, Emma. There's no need for your intrusion. But before she could protest further, I stepped forward, grabbed the phone, and ended the call with a decisive click. Silence enveloped the room, thick with tension. Marilyn recoiled as if I had struck her, her face twisting into an expression of fury and disbelief.
How dare you?
That was incredibly rude and uncalled for. Who do you think you are, treating me like some naive child? Bobby, drawn by the commotion, appeared at the threshold, his face a mix of concern and frustration. Emma, what's going on? Why are you upsetting my mothers? I turned to him, my frustration mounting. That call was from scammers, Bobby. They were trying to con Marilyn out of her money by claiming her social security number was suspended. This is a common tactic. I've seen it 100 times. Bobby rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture I recognized as him feeling cornered. Okay, but couldn't you have been a bit more diplomatic about it? Marilyn, gathering her belongings with shaking hands, shot me a look sharp enough to curdle milk. I don't need to be saved, especially not by someone who treats me with such disrespect. I'm leaving. We'll see what the bank says about this so-called scam." She stormed out, leaving a chilly silence behind. Bobby sighed, his gaze shifting between the door and me. "Emma, I know you meant well, but you have to handle things more gently, especially with my mother." I felt a twinge of guilt, but stood my ground. I know it seemed harsh. There wasn't time for polite exchanges. Scammers thrive on urgency, and any hesitation could have cost Marilyn dearly. The next day, still feeling a mix of curiosity and guilt, I decided to call her. After 3 rings, she picked up, her voice cold and measured. "What do you want, Emma?" I cleared my throat. "I just wanted to check on you after yesterday." "Did you speak with the bank about that call?" There was a pause on the line before she reluctantly admitted, "Yes, I did. They confirmed it was a scam." Her tone hardened, "But that doesn't excuse how you handled things. You were rude and aggressive." I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling the onset of a headache. "I'm sorry if I seemed harsh. I was just trying to protect you. These scammers are professional deceivers, and they're very convincing." Her reply was curt, laced with a hint of begrudging gratitude. "Well, I suppose I should thank you for stopping a mistake. But don't think this changes my view of your methods or your demeanor. Goodbye, Emma." The tension between Bobby and me had deepened, turning our home from a warm sanctuary into a chilly battlefield. Clinging to hope, I saw his upcoming birthday as an opportunity to melt the ice, to rekindle the fading spark of our relationship. I meticulously planned a weekend getaway just for the 2 of us, dreaming of restoring what we once had. However, as fate, or rather Marilyn, would have it, she bulldozed through my plans with her own. She scheduled a grand dinner at her mansion on a weekday, fully aware my work schedule was overflowing. I pleaded with her over the phone. "Can't we just push it to Saturday? I'm swamped at work." Her voice was a blend of syrup and frost.
"No, dear.
This is when it's happening. Bobby shouldn't have to adjust his birthday to fit around your job." Frustration gnawing at me, I found myself confiding in my boss, the only person who seemed to understand. He had seen enough deceit and betrayal to fill a more novel, yet he recognized the importance of this gesture. "Go," he urged, giving me a knowing look. "Do what you need to do." Arriving at Marilyn's, the party was already in full swing, an ostentatious display of pretense. Marilyn spotted me like a predator zeroes in on prey, her smile tightening as she quickly whispered something to Bobby. There he was, my husband, ensconced by the fireplace, his arm casually draped around a woman who was more than just a colleague. My heart sank, but I steeled myself and approached them. "Aren't you going to introduce me?" I asked, striving to inject calm into my voice that I didn't feel. Bobby flinched as if shocked, his eyes widening. Emma, this is Lori from the gallery," he mumbled, then turned to her. "And this is Emma, a relative." The room might as well have spun. "A relative? Seriously, Bobby? Your wife, remember?" I couldn't keep the incredulity and anger from my voice, the words echoing louder than intended. A hush fell over the room, all eyes on us. Bobby's expression morphed, a mix of embarrassment and irritation flashing across his face. "You know, a real wife would have made her husband's birthday a priority," he snapped back, turning away as if dismissing me from his presence. Before I could recover, Marilyn slithered over, her voice dripping with disdain. "You see, Emma, you just don't fit in here. Bobby needs someone supportive, like Lori, not whatever this is." Her words were like a slap, each one designed to cut deep. Marilyn's voice was venomous as she gestured dismissively towards the door. "I think it's best if you leave. You're not wanted here." Her words hung in the air, sharp and biting. "You know what, Marilyn? Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't belong in a family that thrives on lies and deception." With dignity I scarcely felt, I walked out, the chill of the night enveloping me like an unwelcome embrace. After the disaster at Bobby's birthday and the stark revelations that followed, I knew I needed undeniable proof if I was going to end this marriage on my terms. The thought of following Bobby myself was overwhelming. I could handle unearthing secrets about strangers, but not about the man I once planned to grow old with. So, I reached out to Alan, a colleague known for his knack for uncovering discreet affairs. "Hey, Alan, I need a favor," I managed to say, steadying my voice over the phone. "Anything for you." "What's up?" he responded immediately, his loyalty a small comfort amidst my storm of betrayal. "It's Bobby. I'm sure he's seeing someone." "I need evidence," I admitted, the words bringing a mix of relief and dread. "Say no more. I'll handle it discreetly." "You'll have everything you need soon," Alan assured me, his confidence easing some of my anxiety. True to his word, Alan delivered. Photos, audio clips, the works. It was damning. Lori was indeed more than just a colleague. She was here illegally, seeking a quick marriage to fix her status, and involved in fraud. Part of me wanted to confront Bobby, to throw the evidence in his face and watch him squirm. But then I remembered his condescension, his dismissiveness, and that perpetual smug expression. No, he didn't deserve my concern or my help. Filing for divorce felt like tearing off a Band-Aid from a long festering wound. I demanded financial compensation for his betrayal. It was the least he could do after everything. The fallout was explosive. Marilyn, ever the dragon lady, sided with him, painting me as the villain. But I stood my ground, fueled by the evidence and the injustice of their accusations. The ink on the divorce papers wasn't just dry. It was a testament to a new chapter one was desperate to start. Opening my detective agency wasn't just a dream come true. It was a rebirth, a new beginning from the ashes of my past life with Bobby. The agency quickly earned a reputation for discretion and effectiveness, a reflection of the lessons I'd learned from my saga. One day, as sunlight streamed into my new office, illuminating the framed license on the wall, Alice, my right-hand woman and friend, peeked in. "Boss lady, you've got a minute? We've got a potentially big case. A woman suspects her husband of having an affair and wants the full works. Surveillance, photos, the lot." I couldn't help but smile at the irony. "Sounds like our bread and butter. Do we have the details?" Alice nodded, placing the file on my desk. "Yeah, but there's a catch. She's got a tight budget." I thought for a moment. This was my opportunity to pay it forward, to help someone who might be in the same situation I had found myself in not so long ago. "Tell her we'll work with her budget. And Alice, let's make sure we're thorough. I know all too well what it's like to be on the other side of this conversation." Alice's grin widened. "Knew you'd say that. You're a good person, you know." "Try telling that to my ex," I quipped, a wry smile crossing my lips as I turned back to the files on my desk. My smile didn't reach my eyes as the case unfolded in typical fashion for our detective agency. Infidelity, secrets, and lies. These were patterns I had grown all too familiar with. Yet, with each case we closed, I felt a piece of myself heal, a validation of my choice to start anew. One morning, as the city was just beginning to stir, an elderly woman burst into my office, her distress palpable. She was in the midst of a heated discussion with my receptionist, ranting about her son's wife who had vanished, taking a considerable amount of money with her and leaving them in financial disarray. She demanded to speak with the owner, mentioning she needed a payment plan. Curiosity piqued, and I decided to meet her myself. To my astonishment, I came face to face with Marilyn, my former mother-in-law. The surprise in her eyes mirrored my own, but she quickly masked it with embarrassment. "I run this agency, Marilyn. How can I help?" I managed, my voice steady despite the inner turmoil. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by a hint of shame. Yet, driven by desperation, she was bold. "Emma, you have to help me find her, the woman who ran off with my son's money. Bobby's in shambles. Do it for the family's sake, without charge." The audacity of her request left me momentarily speechless. The same woman who had sided with Bobby unconditionally was now in my office, asking for a favor as if the past had never occurred. "Marilyn, first, we're not family. Second, I run a business, not a charity for wayward ex-in-laws," I replied, my tone firm. "But Emma, after everything, can't you do this one thing?" "It's the least you could do," she pressed her voice a mix of pleading and demand. I couldn't help but laugh, albeit bitterly. "The least I could do, Marilyn? After your son cheated on me, you expect me to just forgive and forget?" I suggest you go to the police. They're better equipped to handle missing persons and fraud." She stood there, flabbergasted, as if the thought of me refusing her had never crossed her mind. "But Emma, no, Marilyn. I learned a valuable lesson from Bobby and from you. Never to trust scammers and liars. It's time you learned the same." I interrupted my decision final. Life indeed comes full circle, but it's up to us to decide how we close that loop. For me, it was by standing firm in my values and looking forward, not back. A week had barely passed since Marilyn's visit when my phone buzzed with a number I thought I'd erased from my life. Seeing Bobby's name flash on the screen was like stepping back into a world I had left behind. Curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Bobby, what do you want?" My tone was guarded, bracing for whatever spiel he had prepared. "Emma, I've been thinking a lot. I want us to start over, get back together, have kids, you know." His voice carried that old familiar blend of hope and what I once mistook for sincerity. I couldn't help but snort. "Really? And where would we live in this fantasy of yours?" His reply was tinged with excitement. "Oh, it's all planned out. We'll live with my mom at first, save some money, then you can buy us a big house. It'll be perfect." I laughed louder this time, the absurdity of the situation striking me fully. "You're just as arrogant as ever, Bobby. You think I'd come back just to play house with you and your mom, and then foot the bill for a big house?" He stumbled over his words, the desperation clear in his voice. "But Emma, I've changed. We can fix everything. Please." Bobby's plea hung in the air, a faint echo of desperation that could no longer reach me. I paused, reflecting on the years I had wasted, the tears I had shed, and the painstaking journey I had undertaken to rebuild myself from the wreckage he had left behind. "Bobby, you haven't changed a bit.
Goodbye."
With that, I hung up, the click of the phone line cutting off not just our conversation but also the lingering ties to a past that had tried to define me. As the quiet settled around me, a profound sense of peace enveloped my heart. The call, absurd as it was, served as the ultimate validation of my growth, my resilience, and my independence. I had built a new life and a thriving career, and reclaimed my sense of self, achievements that would have been unattainable had I remained trapped in a marriage that stifled and diminished me. Bobby's call turned out to be nothing more than a minor disturbance, a fleeting reminder of how far I had come. The future lay ahead, bright and brimming with promise, like a blank canvas ready to be adorned with new dreams, new challenges, and fresh achievements. Turning my attention back to the work that had given me purpose and a sense of belonging, I felt a surge of readiness for whatever lay ahead. After all, the best revenge is living well, and I was fully intent on doing just that. The work ahead was not just a job, it was a testament to my journey, a reflection of the strength I had garnered and the new paths I was eager to explore. My heart was steady, my resolve firm, and my life unequivocally my own.